Right, Matt, we need to be really serious in this show. We've got a very
Right.
special guest joining us. Really special.
Okay. Who we got?
We've got Max Rebo joining us on the show.
What? The blue elephant? What? The one that plays the piano?
Obviously not the blue elephant.
I say he's not real, is he?
Well, no, obviously. We've got Simon J Williamson, who played or puppeteered Max Rebo. He was also in Little Shop of Horrors, and he was also in some of the Muppets movies and Dark Crystal.
Amazing. Well, I really can't wait for that. But we're not going there just yet. Before we get to that part, as always, if you love what we do, check out our Instagram, check out our Facebook, check out our Twitter, and follow us with all the things that we post. This video, if you don't get a chance to hear all of it, or if you come halfway in, it'll be on YouTube, it'll be on Facebook, and for the rest of our lives. So you can always catch up after. And on all major streaming platforms, you can listen to that while you're at work, and you should be doing other more important things. So yeah, but first, this.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Metropolis.
And we are live. And Max Rebo is in the room. Well, Max
Lovely
Rebo.
to meet you, Max.
How are you? Good to be here. Got me
Thanks
the
for doing
little,
this,
little
Simon.
Max Rebo doll.
Amazing.
Lucky.
Is that something that you took from the set? That's one of the questions I want to know from Return of the Jedi.
Oh, right. No, this isn't because obviously this is this size. And I'm
small. Yeah.
in front of the camera. Yeah. No, this is a commercially available thing that's become recently available, and so I take them to shows and sign a few of them, etc.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
No, the whole idea of whether you can take something off a film set, no, not really. Particularly if it's costume or a character, because they'll later on go into museums and places and, be kept in storage. Yeah. I think the only thing I stolen was a bit of, I can't remember what it's called. It's like it's a kind of very bendy, extra stiff foil covered in black paint that they put over the edges of lights to stop the light leaking out to the side. So it works like a flag, a lighting flag.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I nicked off set, because I have loads of those.
Well,
I'm funny that way. That's the kind of thing I would steal.
Amazing.
Something
amazing.
practical. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, just want to start the show by saying a massive thank you to Simon Williamson, who has joined us today. And if you didn't know who Simon was, as I mentioned in the intro, Simon, you were Max Rebo amongst other characters in Star Wars Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
You was in Dark Crystal. You was in some of the Muppets movies. The list goes on. You've had an amazing career, really, in that respect. And it's very niche what you do, as well as kind of, I know from, doing a bit of research, you've directed, you've been an actor yourself, but I guess most famously, you're known for your puppeteering.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, because Star Wars is so huge, really, and it's still, still big today, as you see with all the kind of television spin-offs and extra films. So yeah, that's, it's the thing I suppose I'm best known for. Which is a bit weird, really, but there you go. I mean, I'm very glad and I'm very thankful, because, sort of 40 years later, I can be invited out to some convention in the States or anywhere in Europe, and they put me up in a hotel and they pay my flight, and I'm treated very well, and I just basically sit and sign autographs, and I have chats like this, in panels and that sort of thing. So it's very humbling, the fact that this job of 40 years ago is still having repercussions. It's still lasting in some way for me.
When you joined to Return the Jedi, at that point it was obviously a very big deal sort of at that time. And did you feel walking onto a set or being involved in that production, did it feel like a big deal as such?
Oh, absolutely, because it was the third Star Wars film to be made, so you didn't, it wasn't an unknown quantity. And the wonderful thing about it is I didn't need to audition. My audition was effectively the work I'd done and finished doing about 6 months before at the same studio, Elstree, on Dark Crystal. So Dark Crystal really opened things up for me. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, I did have to audition for, and they're kind of 2 weeks worth of auditions, whittling it down to a smaller and smaller group of people. And then we started working together on very physical stuff over quite a long period before we started shooting.
So what does an audition? So I was just going to say, what does an audition for this type of work look like? What do you have to do?
Well, okay, now there's a newspaper called The Stage, which all the actors would look at. Generally, you don't get many fantastic jobs out of it. You know, they don't sort of advertise them. But there was one very intriguing one. It said H-O, ho, and an exclamation mark. And then it said something like equity actors, dancers, mimes, acrobats, jugglers, blah, blah, required for film requiring large-scale creatures or performing large-scale creatures. And yeah, I didn't really know what it was, but I thought it might be something involving circus skills. So you'd, form a human pyramid and do stuff. So I did a bit of acrobatics and tumbling as well, and mime. It was all in my wheelhouse of skills. So I applied for it, and the first audition, which was in a big hall, which is for the British Folk Dance Society. And it was what we call a group audition. And there was a person in charge of it, was a Swiss mime artist called Jean-Pierre Amiel, who about 6 months or 9 months before I'd done a workshop with in Cardiff. So I knew his work. And I said, oh, I was at your workshop. And he said, oh, I remember. He's French, and I said, he doesn't remember, he's just being polite. But anyway, so I kind of knew something about Amiel. I knew something about his way of working, and at that stage I used to do a lot of these physical auditions, and I really quite liked them and enjoyed them, and this one went very well, along with all the other later ones. So the first audition, I think, was purely kind of mime stuff in a room, all physical stuff led by Amiel, and the second one was at Elstree Studios, the TV studios where they had been shooting the Muppets. And for the first time, we saw one of the creatures, which was the head and neck of a mystic. So one by one, we stuck our hands in this head and crouched down and did a little improvisation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I actually, funny enough, going back to what you said about not having to audition for Star Wars, I did actually hear about that in another interview that you've done, I think. And is it true that when you got the part in Star Wars, or at least was kind of testing out some of the different characters, Max Rebo wasn't even the first one that they gave to you to try?
I was actually hired as a puppeteer. Because of the Jim Henson connection. Although, whereas in Dark Crystal, the work we actually did, we were called body puppeteers.
Right.
We were essentially mimes, and we were a slightly different group than the main Henson puppeteers. Mm-hmm. But because of the connection with Dark Crystal and the reference they gave us, we were the puppeteers. So there was a whole group of other people called mime artists, who were also heavily featured in Jabba the Hutt's palace.
Yeah.
Although by the end of it, I ended up doing a bit more of the mime artist's work than a puppeteer's work.
Did you do, but like prior to the Dark Crystal and prior to that audition, was being a puppeteer something that you did, or something you had interest in at all?
No, the Dark Crystal really was my just my general physical stuff, acrobatics, mime, that kind of stuff. I had a kind of affinity for it and enjoyed it a lot. But I had never stuck my hand in a puppet. apart from some Peter Pan puppets I got for Christmas once when I was very young.
Amazing.
Well,
and I just waggled them around like that without any skill or anything. They're beautiful puppets, though. But so I wasn't really a puppeteer. But while we were rehearsing Dark Crystal, Jim Henson would come and give us a puppeteering workshop once a week in the evening after work, because he knew while we were rehearsing Dark Crystal, they were shooting the Great Muppet Caper. And there would be scenes where they would need a lot of puppeteers. So they would rope us in, but obviously they wanted us not to make fools of ourselves and to know the rudiments of puppetry. And who best or who better to learn the rudiments of puppetry from than Jim Henson himself?
What an incredible opportunity. And that's quite a nice thing for your CV, isn't it? Being trained by the man himself.
Yes, I think I only did 2 nights on Great Muppet Caper in a big crowd sequence. And then also on subsequent Muppet films, many years later, when they needed a lot of puppeteers, they'd call on people like me in addition to their regulars. Yeah. So
having done some acting as well, Simon, as you know, just as yourself, do you feel there's less pressure and nerves when you're doing it as a puppeteer, so you're not kind of on show as such? Do you know what I mean? Is there an element of difference in that?
Yes, it is different because if you're acting, particularly if you're acting on screen in particular, so the camera is very close to you, obviously you can't do any, your eyes can't even do a little look to the left because it's anything like that. So you have to be super concentrated, yet at the same time relaxed and forget about the camera. Whereas with a puppet, you're one step removed. You're thinking about what the character's doing, but the character's kind of just speaking like that. So you're kind of connecting your mind to what the puppet is doing and how it lip syncs and what it might do with its head. Sorry, it doesn't look very good on this camera because there's a kind of, I think there's a slight time lag. It looks like I'm doing really bad puppeteering.
In regards to that, is there, I guess it's a mix of the two, does someone guide you as to, because you are somewhat removed, does someone guide you in terms of, right, I need you to move this way or that way or doing this particular thing when you're working with it, particularly the big creatures?
Oh, sorry, you talk about big creatures or
just generally. Sorry, I'm digressing. With the puppetry, is it up to your interpretation, or are you guided in terms of?
Yeah, it's mostly up to your interpretation. Yeah. Obviously, if there's certain key things you need to do in a scene, they will tell you, like you have to look over there at this point.
Yeah.
So in Max Rebo, there's a bit where there's the thermonuclear detonator is brought out, and obviously I have to be looking in that direction to react. Actually, the darkness is kind of consuming us. So even though it's horrible light on my head, I'm going to put my light on now. Don't you think? No problem. Yeah, it looks a bit. Problem. Yes, it looks a bit like I was living in a Dickensian hovel. And now you can see that I'm living in untidiness. There you go.
It's fine. Don't forget, if people listen to this, they won't see any of it. So
that's it.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Oh, what a shame they'll miss the wonderful visual delight.
Well, you didn't just play Max Rebo, did you? There was a few characters, and one of the ones that I noticed that you did play was one of the, or it might have actually been 2, I think, one of the Gamorrean guards.
I probably played about 3 or 4 Gamorrean guards.
There you go.
In the different sequences.
I used to love those when I was little, and I had the toy, and I had the Rancor monster as well. So I had
Oh,
great
wow,
delight
good.
in feeding it the guards.
You were
which I
feeding
believe-
them Simon. That's what you were doing.
Basically, yeah, that's what I was doing. How did that work? Like, because you were one of the ones that was eaten. I'm
I'm the one who gets eaten. Yes. Well, there's a sequence. So we're in Jabba the Palace is looking down through this big hole in the floor, where one Gamorrean guard, falls down or is knocked down. I can't remember. Now the stunt man does the first part of the fall, and then there's a new shot, and it takes up from me on my knee in the process of getting up. And then it's all the action of the scene from that moment. I turn around and I see the Rancor, which there was nothing there. So I just know how big it is and where to look. So these days what they do is they put a kind of white tennis ball or table tennis ball up at the right height. But this was just pure imagination. You have to kind of react. It's a monster. So I'm kind of going, help, stuff like that. So when the film finally came out, I got to see what the Rancor looked like. But before that, I didn't know anything. So
and do you think that having seen it back, do you think you reacted in the right way?
Yeah,
I think so. Yes. I over the top. Yes,
that's
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing, I'm a Star Wars fan to a point where my knowledge isn't certainly not as good as Matt's, but I have been enjoying the new stuff that's recently been coming out on Disney. We've just had obviously Obi-Wan, which for me was incredible. But when I was reading up about you and the fact that you played these Gamorrean guards, they recently appeared in the Book of Boba Fett series, which was on. So I'm wondering, Simon, whether although you was in it, are you a fan? Are you keeping up to date with the new stuff?
No, I'm not keeping up to date. Mm-hmm. I will do as soon as I get Disney Plus. At the moment, I've got Amazon Prime and Netflix, and I'm thinking, well, I'll watch a bit more on one of those, get rid of those, and then take Disney Plus for 2 or 3 months. But as yet, I haven't done so. I mean, I have seen, because I'm a member of BAFTA as well, and they kind of show certain things for the television awards. So last year's awards, I think it was, I was able to watch an episode of The Mandalorian, which I thought was terrific. And I know from various people it's got great reviews.
Incredible.
Not so much the Book of Boba Fett, which I don't think has had such good reviews. But also, to my horror, I saw that there was a Max Rebo, and they hadn't asked me. And not only hadn't they asked me, but I think the Max Rebo looks awful. It looks like a party balloon. So A, I was kind of insulted that I wasn't asked, but B, slightly relieved that I wasn't having to perform in this, I think, just not a very good puppet.
Well, I was going to say, is that something, I mean, that's as commonly done now with puppeteering and things like that, or is it more kind of mechanical and, tech based now?
What do you mean? That
the
old
characters.
Just in general. I mean, we're looking at kind of Return of the Jedi and Dark Crystal, which are kind of in the 80s, let's say.
Yeah.
Now in modern day 2022, is there as much call for puppeteering and things like that in movies, or is it more kind of CGI and mechanical robots? And things like that?
It's the latter. I mean, I was in on the last kind of throw of the dice. It's kind of, in a way, the Dark Crystal was the first throw of the dice because it was an entirely puppet-based film, apart from one shot where my friend Kieran Shah, who's a little guy, was Jen running over a kind of a field into the horizon. So otherwise, every character was a puppet.
Right.
Pretty soon after that, after Dark Crystal, the Hensons moved back to North America. So they went to Canada to do Fraggle Rock. And what had been established in Hampstead as their workshop was, kind of not doing the same kind of things at all. So they weren't going to make any more films. And yes, CGI was beginning to come in then. And it did take over pretty much completely. And with the prequel films, certainly that's full of all CGI stuff. But I think when they did the latest ones, you know, The Force Awakens, etc., they made a conscious effort to bring back some of the old-fashioned puppeteering techniques as well as CGI, so they'd have both together, which, you know, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
I think the thing about a creature or a costume that was physically there on the set in his film, you can tell the difference between that and a CGI thing on the whole. You know, you can sense the weight and the mass and the presence of it, rather than something that, you know, no matter how realistically it moves, doesn't quite convince you as something that's physically there on the set.
And I think the physical elements, I think, age a lot better than some of the, particularly like you mentioned, the prequels, and the CGI around that time, and prior to that, when George Lucas started to decide to, I'm going to change that bit, and that the scene in A New Hope with Max Rebo, and he had singers and all of this different stuff, it just doesn't look as good now compared to some of the more physical effects. I don't think, certainly.
Yes, I agree, but then I'm biased because the kind of work I did was that old-fashioned classical style stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So,
amazing.
I mean, but CGI and all the kind of artificial virtual effects, they've moved on tremendously and will continue to improve all the time. But yeah, for me, it's not as satisfying, or as I don't think people get as much of an emotional connection with it.
Yeah. Has there been any recent things that you've seen which have, you know, whether it be TV or film or otherwise, where you've seen the use of puppets or creatures in the real world, and it's really sort of impressed you or sort of taking you aback?
I think the Dark Crystal series was pretty good, and they were using both techniques side by side there. Yeah.
Well, if we pause you there, because I think this is a good time for our section, ? Which you've almost preempted what is the question. So let's go to that, and we will be back in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Hello, gents. Thank you for having me back on. My question for Simon is regarding the Dark Crystal. It was one of my favourite films growing up, and I really loved the Netflix series that came out, I think, in 2020. I just wanted to know what his views on that show were, and also the fact that it hasn't been renewed for a second season, because I think that is a real tragedy.
Simon, I could see you nodding along there. Is that because the tune's really good, or
probably? Yeah. Not quite Led Zeppelin, but
No, not quite.
We're getting there.
Yeah. So my reaction to the Netflix series, The Age of Reason. Well, I must say I approached it with some nervousness, thinking, it's 10 hours. How are they going to get 10 hours worth of story out of what started as the simple 1.5 hour film of The Dark Crystal? And apart from slight irritation in episode 1 at the voiceover, I was soon hooked. So I binge watched that in about 2.5 to 3 days.
Wow.
I thought it was terrific. I thought that the work was great. A little hard to follow with so many of the tribes of Gelflings, but no, I thought it was really good.
Are you shocked that they're not renewing it for another series?
Yeah, I don't know what the parameters are, because Netflix, certainly at that time, they made a habit of not releasing viewing figures. So they must have viewing figures and make their decisions on that basis, but they weren't releasing them. I don't know if they do now. One thing about it is it would have been very expensive,
Mm.
10 hours of that. And maybe they just thought it wasn't worth that amount of money to revisit the Dark Crystal in a second series. Yeah. So
Was you again disappointed not to be involved in the series?
a little disappointed. Yes, you know, they'd probably say, "Oh, well, he's a bit old now," but yeah, I would have loved to have done even just a couple of days on it, just for kind of my own personal continuity.
Yeah.
In fact, what I did was a few months before I made a special video with myself talking to camera, talking everyone through what I'd done on Dark Crystal, with lots of clips from the making of and photographs and stuff. And I did a separate one of that, incorporating the work on that and on Return of the Jedi. The second one really to help me get more convention appearances. But yeah, my wonderfully constructed 8-minute video didn't do the job. Yeah, it's all a bit strange, I think, really, that they didn't. I mean, Mike Quinn, who's a very good puppeteer, also kind of contacted them, and they said, "Oh yes, we're definitely, you know, you're definitely interested, Mike." He said, "Absolutely." He said, "Well, we'll let you know by the end of the month," and he never got the call. So anyway, who knows?
It's a shame. It is a shame to hear that someone who's been heavily involved in them sort of projects, in the originals, you know, and when you see things like Star Wars with, you know, even some of the nods back to the old cast from the originals of that, you know, coming back round. All right, some of them are, you know, huge Hollywood actors and things like that, but at the same time, you know, it's I guess, like you said, it's kind of something that you were part of the foundations of that.
Yes. I mean, we shot on Dark Crystal for 5 months. I wouldn't, the original film, I wouldn't necessarily want to do 5 months worth of work again. That's why I would have liked to have done even a week on the Dark Crystal series, but it wasn't to be. Never mind. Yeah, and the Max Rebo thing, when he suddenly turned up, you know, on the Book of Boba Fett. I saw the pictures on Facebook. I go, what?
How dare you?
They shot it all in a volume in Los Angeles. So volume is like the kind of stage area you have motion capture and other virtual reality techniques. And at that time, because of COVID, when they were shooting, I wouldn't have been able to get over to the States anyway. But I do wish they'd asked.
Yeah. And you're still heavily involved. Like I've seen that you still do a lot of conventions and panels and things like that. Quite a few I noticed in France and a few in the States as well. So how do they come about now?
Well, now there are so many Star Wars films and TV series. They come about more circumspectly because there's more people to choose from. So yeah, I kind of. Yeah, places I've been before, I'll ask them, or I might just get asked direct if I'm interested in doing this and that convention. And, you know, it's good fun. It's good fun. So Europe has always been very good. So particularly Germany, Holland, to some extent, France. I've not been to Spain yet, but they have a couple. And American ones are always fun. You kind of feel a little bit more valued if someone's going to pay you pay you for your flight and hotel to go all the way to the States. It kind of it's more flattering and it's fun. You know, it's fun to meet different people and
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Has there been any people that you've met there that you've sort of admired, or any that you sort of wanted to meet previously at the convention?
Oh, you mean sort of fellow performers?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's always terrific fun. Yeah. There's one in France I did recently. It's for a small group called the Magic Universe of Cosplayers. And then they had this convention in the Ardèche region. And I'm a kind of honorary member along with 2 colleagues and also John Rhys Davis, who I hadn't met. And he was great fun, wonderful chap, full of typical actory stories, and yeah, just good, really good fun to meet such people. Yeah,
Amazing.
And does it surprise you that sort of, obviously you've had a fantastic career, but sometimes when you're sitting there and people are coming up to you and saying, "Oh, I love what you do," and as you said, some of it is a fair while ago. Does it surprise you sometimes that there's still that response?
I'm over the surprise. I'm just enjoying the experience, which, as the years go on, I enjoy a bit more. If it's busy, that is. If it's a convention and it's quiet, it's quite energy sapping. Whereas if quite a few people are coming to your table to talk and have autographs and photos, that gives you energy as well.
Mm-hmm. But on a similar note to what Matt just asked, then, not just on Star Wars, but across all the films, has there been any kind of actors that you've been in awe of when you've had the chance to meet? I don't know if it may be someone from Star Wars, it might be someone from I don't know, Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, I mean, talking of Little Shop of Horrors, I was really gutted that the days I was filming, I didn't get to meet Steve Martin. So he was I was a particular fan of Steve Martin at the time. Rick Moranis, I did scenes with. He was great fun, but I really wanted to meet Steve Martin. Yeah.
What was the role that you played in Little Shop of Horrors? What part did you play in the process?
I played various bits of the plant. So, so when Audrey 2 gets really big, you need a massive team of puppeteers, and each person will either be on a tendril, which is kind of swinging around in front of his face, or in the big number called Mean Green Mother from Outer Space. They're on a kind of talking pod, so they're like they sing like Muppets, basically. So, yeah.
I absolutely loved that film, or still love that film, and sort of where it was a regular rental for me from the video shop when I was young, and just watched it again and again and again and again. And it is just such a, I think watching it as an adult now, it's quite a dark film, particularly you mentioned Steve Martin, his character, he's a James, you've not seen it, have you?
Yeah. I've not seen it, no.
He's a sadistic dentist that just loves sort of inflicting pain on people, and he's also in a relationship with what's her name?
Audrey.
That's it, Audrey. Of course, it's Audrey too.
The plant is named. Rick Moranis' character names the plant after the girl
of course
he loves from afar. Yes.
So the Steve Martin's girlfriend, he's really, really treats her badly, and it's a really abusive relationship. So what I used to watch it as an 8-year-old or whatever it was, and absolutely love it. And it's a musical, and there's songs and that, but it's all glossed over now. But watching it now, thinking, wow, this is quite a dark tale. But
they shot 2 endings. They shot a second ending.
Really?
Because we'd finished all the shooting, and then a few weeks later, we all came back to shoot an alternative ending.
And what was that? I mean,
they tested it. So I'm trying to think what was the original, what was the ending one? Yeah, what was the one that was used?
I can't remember.
One of them.
Does he kill the plant?
Used it's a kind of, there's a the skyline of New York, and these bits of the plant gradually taking over New York.
Oh right.
I think so. If you got the DVD, I would imagine it would have both endings.
Have the alternate. I'll have to have a look.
Well, I have just been told that Question Mark himself, who's typing in the comments, has said that he's going to make me watch that next weekend because he is also a massive fan. He said the one that was used was a happy ending.
Yeah.
Right.
So there you go.
When he gets to go. Yeah. Great film. Absolutely amazing.
About a year after finishing Dark Crystal, one of my the fellow Dark Crystal performers, he got married to his Canadian girlfriend in Canada and invited me to the wedding. So I thought, well, I'm flush with money, having just done a film. So damn it, I will actually pay and get myself over to Canada for the wedding. And I on the way, I called in New York, and I stayed with one of the Muppet people for a few days.
An actual Muppet, or
a Muppet performer, Bobby Payne, the late Bobby Payne. So, and I went. I was still very much into theatre then, so I would go and see lots of plays and shows, and one of which was Little Shop of Horrors.
wow.
Which they were all talking about because some of the Muppet creature fabricators had made the plant for the stage show.
Yeah.
And so I saw the first iteration of the musical off Broadway, and it was absolutely terrific. And they said to me, we're bringing the show to London. Would you like to play the plant? And guess what I said?
Did you say no and you regret it?
I say no. I said, wow. Because it's one thing to be doing it. Well, you see, you're actually physically inside this massive plant on stage. So there's one thing to do a take in a television or film that takes about 45 seconds to a minute. There's another thing to be stuck inside a great big 4 hours and an entire show. And actually, I really wanted to play the dentist.
Yeah,
So,
that would be a really fun character.
I got a copy of the music. The Henson people sent it over in their pouch, and the record of it, of the Broadway production. And I rehearsed and I auditioned for the part of Orin the dentist, the sadistic dentist you're talking about. But my voice wasn't good enough. But it would have been a great fun part to play.
Are there any other parts that you think, or sort of productions that you think, I wish I could have been involved in that particular thing?
These days, not so much, because I haven't acted for ages, apart from I do audiobooks and stuff like that, voiceover stuff. I like sort of using my voice, but I don't really miss the struggle of being an actor. So many are out of work and, looking around for work. So yeah, I don't tend to think about it much, anything I miss. And most of the time I'll watch something terrific on the TV or a film and I don't think, oh, I wish I was playing that. So it's kind of like I've really moved on from acting, apart from the voice stuff, which I really enjoy.
Yeah. And your voice in particular, Simon, it's very strange because obviously the Obi-Wan Kenobi series has only just finished last week, I think. And just listening to your voice, there's elements of kind of Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan there, and even a bit of Ewan McGregor. And when you're just listening to your voice, I feel like if you said hello there,
and
you would sound like him.
I have the kind of greying beard as well.
You just need a robe, and then
just the robe, and then you're done, and a lightsaber, and then you're done. Oh, and the Force. You'll need the Force, but yeah, don't worry about
the Force too. Yeah.
Well, you did
use the Force.
You did work on one of my favourite films as a youngster, which was the Muppets Christmas Carol, which for me, I know you've done Treasure Island, and I think you've done another one as well, didn't you?
No, I was employed on Treasure Island.
Right, okay.
I spent the entire time in the kind of dressing room and never got asked to come to the set once.
Wow.
I got paid for the job and I went to the wrap party, but I don't get a credit because there's no scene in which I was. So, yeah, it was a little bit on Muppet Caper and a little bit on Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you know the shot and would freeze frame, you wouldn't see or notice me at all.
Yeah. But to be involved in them sort of things is just, it's just incredible. I mean, there's little old me and Matt, doing our weekly podcast, and we're talking to someone who's been on set of some of the biggest films, ever made.
Yeah. Yes, that was a wonderfully busy period. It's terrific. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have, I guess, from the kind of size that Star Wars is as a franchise, is that the one that kind of you always put at the top of your kind of career list, or do you always think of Dark Crystal as your kind of one of the best ones?
I think for job satisfaction, for actually performing a task with some degree of difficulty and doing it convincingly, I would hope, Dark Crystal, absolutely. So
Wow.
the difficulty of being a mystic is not to be underestimated. I mean, it was physically grueling and crippling, so much so that originally they had 10 of us sort of going to be playing the mystics and other body puppeteers, as I told you before, in the film. And what is it? 4 were to start immediately, and the other 6 or the other 5, whatever it was, were to join in about 6 months' time. And they gave us a little retainer for the time between. And there was a big sort of the last day of the last workshops. We were all kind of competing against each other to be, one of the first 4. And I wasn't one of the first 4. I was a bit disappointed by this, but never mind. I went off and I had another job that quickly came up, an acting job that I did anyway. But a few weeks later, I got a call and they said, "Oh, Toby's injured his back," because the work on the Mystics was, as I said, crippling. And you're next on the list. Are you free to come and join us tomorrow? So
Yes.
I did become one of the first 4, the main 4.
Amazing.
Yeah, why am I talking about this? Talking about crippling and job satisfaction. Yes, the kind of difficulty that you had to do, and also it was completely unlike anything else. Dark Crystal. So it was experimental and breaking new ground for everybody, from the costume makers, the fabricators, everybody, the performers in particular. It was just so unusual and therefore extremely rewarding to do that. Yeah. And I guess what massively heavy looking creatures, they were actually a lot easier to perform than the Mystics. But you could get rid of all your excess energy in a Garthim suit, because you can flail and wave your arms or your claws around. Whereas in the Mystic, you have to be very contained inside your costume, and you move extremely slowly, which is obviously more difficult than moving quickly, because you have to, keep your body posture the right height and everything, and not shake with the physical effort of it. So that's why it's kind of favorite. But the ones are favorite, of course, at conventions is the Star Wars, because the Star Wars is so much better known than Dark Crystal. So Dark Crystal is more of a kind of has more of a niche appeal.
And I guess like you said before, it kind of gave you the platform and the exposure to give you them opportunities that you went on to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It all started from being selected for that job. Without it, I wouldn't have been doing small parts on Muppet films, and I certainly wouldn't have got anywhere near Star Wars, I'm sure. Or then Little Shop of Horrors. So all those films emanated from that one opportunity, which is often something that happens in life. One thing that happens, and the advert, I thought, well, I've no idea what this is, but I'll go for it anyway.
Did you get to I guess because there's so many things and scenes being done, going back to Star Wars again, did you get to meet George Lucas?
Yes, he wasn't. He's quite shy, so he stays in the background quite a lot. I mean, before I did Max Rebo, I was going to be doing a rather boring-looking puppet called 6-6, which was like a purpley brown slug on the floor of Jabba the Hutt palace with 6 eyes, 3 on one side, 3 on the other, and 6 legs. And he was a bit of a uninteresting puppet, because there wasn't I couldn't
Was you
individually.
just laying on the floor? But
I controlled his back, so my arm was in his back, and it could undulate his back and move a bit. It was a bit boring, and I think trying to get some explore the full range of movement of this particular character. They'd recently painted the eyes with a glossy red paint, and they got scratched on the floor of the studio, so I wasn't very popular because they had to go and repaint them. And then I think also another puppeteer whose name should be nameless, he decided he was going to stick his hand in my puppet. Missile. But it's a thing.
Sounds like a euphemism.
You shouldn't do it. Yeah, exactly. And I was a bit pissed off with that. And I'm not sure, but I think that's at the point Phil Tippett said to me, well, why don't you have a look at this other character up in the creature room? And I went up the stairs, and there was this wonderful bright blue creature with a trunk. And I thought, bright blue in the middle of a dark, smoky set, he's really going to stand out. And I like, yes, please. And that's how I got to play Max Rebo. And also, someone said, I think Phil Tippett himself wanted to be in Max Rebo, but the costume was just too tight and too difficult to get into. And he's not a performer anyway. He's the guy that did all the creatures, basically.
I love the fact that there was a creature room as well that you were invited to go into.
Imagine if you were a burglar and you're broken into somewhere and you're going around there with your torch and it hits upon a great Mon Calamari like Admiral Akbar, you'd go, ah!
Just to let the viewers who are watching live right now, just to remind you, we have got Simon J Williamson joining us here. If you have got any questions that you want to throw at Simon, send them into the comments and we'll ask him while we've still got him for the next kind of 10 minutes or so. Matt, was there any other questions that you had on your long list?
The one question that goes back to what we were saying very much in the beginning of the show, about you saying not really being able to steal anything essentially from the sets. And there was a story very recently, I think it was in the last week, that someone had auctioned an X-Wing. It was one of the prop X-Wings from the special effects. And it went, I think it sold for, was it 2.3 million? Because so few of these things exist, because they blew some up and they, threw some away or whatever it may be. What do you think of sort of that? I don't know. I think because the people that have a bit of money now look back to some of these films with nostalgia and that, and they want to obtain those sort of things. Do you think it's right that, say, a puppet or a prop is treated almost the same as art, like fine art and things like that?
Yes, I think good luck to them. I think it's a piece of film history, and see, a lot of these creatures are made of rubber, so they kind of deteriorate. I mean, the Hensons had their own particular secret formula of foam rubber that they wouldn't give to anyone else. So, having been used to on Dark Crystal, the Henson brand of rubber, which was very light but still very strong and flexible. When I came to do Max Rebo was unnecessarily heavy because, Hensons weren't going to give Lucasfilm their secret formula for foam. So if Max Rebo had been made by the Hensons, he would have been about a third to a half lighter, I'm sure. Yeah.
And still be around, potentially. Yeah.
So there is actually my mystic, Ursol the Chanter, was in some museum in Boston or somewhere. It was reported 2 or 3 years ago, and it was really decaying. So they didn't have any proper way to preserve it. So these things have a finite life. So if you can find there's a way to get a preserved copy, it is deservedly valuable, I think.
Well, you mentioned
it's a piece of film history from a terrible film that no one likes much at all. Then forget it, you know.
Yeah,
Except there'll always be some person that's, oh, that's my favorite
That's it.
film. You know.
they're all- that's it. What I've seen. There's always one film that is. What strangely, you saying that when I was looking at your IMDb sort of bio, it mentioned a film called Top Secret on there,
Yes.
which again was one that I remember renting sort of and watching, and I had completely forgot about. I've not watched it since, but I remember it being not the greatest film ever. Sort of
No, but it
made.
was interesting.
It was fun.
I think that's the film where Val Kilmer met Joanne Whalley, where they later married.
Oh, really?
I think
I
so.
didn't realise.
Or maybe that was Willow. Oh, actually, I'm getting confused. But anyway, yeah, Val Kilmer with Top Secret. Well, it was interesting because it was the same people who made the Airplane films.
Zuckers, is it?
Abraham, Zucker, and Zucker. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And it was a fun film. It was a kind of spooked Nazi war film.
Yeah.
So they were extending their kind of repertoire from the Airplane films and Top Gun, not Top Gun,
No.
Naked Gun.
Naked Gun. Yeah.
which were all much easier as satires to do, but they were kind of pushing the boat out a bit.
Well, and some of the other credits that I saw on there were ones that probably from more recent times, things like The Bill. I don't know whether that was just as a kind of small part.
You see, when I finished doing Dark Crystal and Return of the Jedi, I desperately wanted to get back to doing some proper acting and getting my face seen on the screen. So yes, I did the usual acting thing that I talked about before, as now being sort of fed up with that round. Yeah, trying to get on little parts in the series like Casualty and
That's right, yeah.
Bill and Campion. Yeah.
Well, we've just had, and we have had a question come in for you, and it's ironically from Mark again. He's obviously a big fan. He wants to know, which puppet or monster from any film do you think is the best, maybe the most effective or technically impressive?
Ooh. I will tell you the performance that I think is the best, and that was Frank Oz in Dark Crystal as the Skeksis. Is he the Chamberlain or I can't remember which one, who's basically, he's pushed against a wall and set upon by the other Skeksis, and they rip his clothes off, and he's left there panting against this wall, completely naked. And that bit of puppeteering, seeing it live, was just extraordinary. That character lives. Frank Oz's puppeteering on that was absolutely superb. And it kind of, being there at the moment and watching it, it kind of sets your hair on end.
Was it?
Would
you
all the characters in Dark Crystal, all the Skeksis were terrific, you know. And so, particularly when you take off all the clothes, the finery, the kind of sculpted, weird Skeksis bodies were not a thing of beauty, but a thing of interest. They're really quite repulsively ugly, but so effective. I'm sure there are some other characters, puppet characters I'll think of when this session is over, but that's the one that really springs to mind mostly.
Was he?
Is terrific.
Was Frank Oz a particular peer that you looked at and thought that's kind of not idolized, but someone you kind of thought that's someone I aspire to be like?
Only. I mean, not before doing Dark Crystal, because I hadn't really met them, and I just knew Jim and Frank's work from the Muppet Show. Yeah. So, although yes, because Frank has a very individual voice, he speaks from back here. So all his puppet voices, they speak from that back of the throat.
Mhm.
So, Fozzie Bear is and Miss Piggy is there's also back here. So it's got Frank's kind of vocal quality underneath it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What was the question again?
You answered it. It's fine.
That's great.
Did
Wow.
I idolize them? Yeah, not until I sort of met them, and then you can, as I said, that kind of moment of Frank's superb puppeteering, on set, probably halfway through the shoot, because they weren't very ostentatious, and Frank and Jim were co-directing. So, and if you're performing yourself, you don't often have much time to look at what other performers are doing.
Mm.
And if it's in a puppet, in a mystic, you can see very little anyway. I think I could see a little bit of the ground in front of me. And on Return of the Jedi in Max Rebo, I could see absolutely nothing. And I could hear very little. So they had to give me a little earphone to hear action and cut.
Amazing. Well,
Well,
I think that kind of comes round to the end of this week's show. I just want to say, Simon, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure Matt will completely agree with me.
Yeah.
There's been loads of comments coming in as well. Thanks to everyone who's joined and watched. Simon, we would love to have you on the show. I think we could talk for another hour to you. It's been that good. If you stick around, we're just going to play our outro video. We'll chat to you afterwards briefly.
I'll just tell you my website in case people want
Yes,
to buy
please do.
Please
Yeah,
do.
before we leave, please do.
www.simonjwilliamson.co.uk. That's Simon with the letter J, Williamson. So,
And are you on social media as well, Simon?
oh yeah, I'm on Facebook. I think there's Simon J Williamson. Yeah.
No problem. We'll get
I
all
have
your-
shared. Well, I was going to say below this, when people watch it on YouTube or Facebook, your links are all on there, so they'll be able to find you.
Lovely. Brilliant.
And where can people see you next, Simon? Are you got any functions lined up or anything?
Well, the next convention I'm doing that I know about, I hope I get one before that, is November in Rhode Island. So it's a bit
wow.
Very
far
nice.
to go from for British people.
Well, we do have a lot of followers out in the States. So if anyone's in that area in November,
Yeah,
go
it's
and see
Rhode
Simon.
Island Comic Con. I think something like, early November. And I just heard on Facebook today, I hope I get invited. They're having another Dark Crystal convention called the Great Conjunction, which is something like November the 12th and 13th in Los Angeles.
Oh, fantastic!
So,
That'd be a nice
I
one to go.
hope they can afford me and my airfare, because I would love to go again. They had a great conjunction. That was the last convention I did before the COVID lockdown. It was February 2020, and it was a wonderful convention. First ever Dark Crystal convention, the Great Conjunction, Part 1. And loads of people, a few people from America, lots of us English people. And it was at Elstree Studios.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, brilliant. Well, we will see all the viewers and listeners again next week. Thank you for listening, and we will see you all soon. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as we did. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future episodes.
Yeah, and you can also follow us on all social media, so you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok.